In the dark storerooms of the Royal Maritime Museum are masterful depictions of the most decisive naval battles in British history.
Well, this painting represents a pivotal moment in the Battle of the Nile, the 1st of August 1798. Napoleon had decided to take a vast fleet of transports and warships to Egypt in order to threaten British power and interests in the east.
The British forces were led by Admiral Horatio Nelson, who was intent on destroying Napoleon's fleet before they could invade Egypt.
Nelson had been looking for him for several months, crisscrossing the Mediterranean, but they'd never met. And this is the moment when those two forces finally clashed.
The 120 guns on the French flagship the Lorient outnumbered Nelson's, which carried only 74 guns.
You can see how this was a colossal three-deck warship with far more firepower than any of the British ships present. It therefore presented an enormous threat to the British squadron.
But when a fire took hold in the stern of the Lorient, Nelson took advantage.
The British ships surrounding actually fired into the area that was ablaze in order to make it more difficult still to extinguish the flames. This touched off the magazines where the ship's gunpowder was stored, and the ferocity of this explosion actually stopped the fighting completely for several minutes, not least because the captains of surrounding ships, whether they were French or British, didn't want them to be set fire by bits of flaming wreckage that were raining down on them.
It was an immense victory for the British, and although it was a ruthless and savage battle, the British ships lowered boats to pick up hundreds of survivors. They also fished out other stranger trophies.
One of Nelson's other captains, Benjamin Hallowell, also took a large piece of one of the Lorient's masts, which he made into a coffin and presented to Nelson after the battle. We might speculate why. It wasn't an unfriendly gesture, but it was a memento mori, that at the moment of his greatest triumph, he was a little signal that he was still a mere mortal. Nelson liked this gift. He kept it in his cabin. He carried it with him. And ultimately, on his death, he was buried in it.
And so, at the end of his days, Britain's most celebrated admiral was entombed in fine French mastwood, salvaged from one of his greatest victories.